district, and I'm going to be doing, we've got several more, which you've seen, Melissa has sent out some events for our future ones, but toward the end of the year, after our big spring testing events, then I'll be doing one on programming. So if you, so you might want to just keep that in your calendar. And I would like to introduce Becky Keur. She is the Digital Learning Center teacher, and actually she was a gifted self-contained teacher for us prior to that. And I met her when she was in my master's classes at Arizona State University on gifted, and she was that individual that you had to read all the papers last because she ruined it for everybody. So, so I think you'll really enjoy her brilliance tonight with speaking on this. Thank you.
Hi everyone, how are y'all tonight?
Good.
Okay, so as she said, I'm Rebekah Keur, and I currently teach at the DLC, which is for our highly gifted students, our middle school program over at Sunrise Middle School. And it's and that particular program, it's a cross-curricular one where we work together and we integrate our subjects with one another to help our students in this project-based learning atmosphere. And part of that project-based learning atmosphere is embedding creativity in all we do. So I just got through, as she said, presenting at National as to how can teachers foster creativity in their children. But this one tonight is for parents. That's not to say that teachers, administrators, and people can't take other things from this, but this one actually wrote specifically for you. So how many of you in here are parents? Cool. How many of you in here are educators, work in the education field somehow or another too? Okay. How many of you in here are children? The awesome people who were trying to mark creative kid. I am too, so just tall one, slightly older version of it. Okay. So in this seminar, you're going to learn about the critical connection between creativity and how gifted children learn. Some methods to help you activate and expand your child's creativity in ways that build on their interest and learning and their experiences, and then increasing and impacting their higher order critical thinking skills. So I'm still giving these towards screens are in here. When most of us think of creativity, we actually think of that in-depth or skillful expression of arts, right? Of creativity. And that is one aspect of it, it's one type of it, where we're saying, wow, that person's really, really creative. But it's important that we don't just hold that one image of creativity in our heads. That part of creativity is, I'm getting used to how this functions, I'm sorry. That part of creativity is like our big C creativity. And big C creativity is definitely an important aspect of creativity. But if we approach our children with this concept of you're only creative if you're producing big things, large things, masterful works of art or things like that, we're actually missing all those moments of creativity that happen naturally every single day as they're learning and growing. And what's important is that we, as the adults in their lives, that we recognize those moments, we recognize how to capitalize on those moments, and then we help our children foster their creativity by encouraging more moments like that to happen. So, that type of creativity is this. It's that little C creativity. It's just the possibility thinking. It's defined as the small ideas, or the ahas that are inspired by our surroundings and enrich our lives, like problem solving, creative play, and outside the box thinking and questioning. So this is where we're going to be spending most of our time tonight, is in this type of creativity. So there are many theories and fields of study that surround creativity, its origins and how one fosters it, and how one understands it. And I have tons of books on this, we have tons of books on this, and I can certainly do a theoretical presentation for you tonight. I'm going to interweave some theory in here, but really I think you're all here more because you're interested in the application of that theory. How do we actually help our kids? So that's where I'm going to be spending most of my time with you tonight. Addressing aspects of this, but we're going to start with the very beginning of child development. As I step back here. Okay. So, curiosity is a prerequisite for creative thinking. So, here we go. Children enter the world curious about their new environment and are programmed to explore it. And it's how they learn. Right? They interact with the world around them, and they're trying to figure things out as they go. The discovery stage is important as you're watching the child's understanding of the world and their placement begin to unfold. As they begin to become mobile, though, they learn how to manipulate their environment and themselves, and every moment becomes a new discovery that they assign meaning to within the context of those moments and lessons that have preceded them. The changes for us, the adults in their lives, might be imperceptible, but for them, the children, in their neural activity, a whole world is coming alive as they problem solve, they figure out their limitations, and they feel out cause and effect, discover cause and effect relationships between their environment. As you have all had toddlars, because I think would you raise your hands about, except for my friend back here who's a child still, or we know toddlers. If we don't have them, we've certainly engaged with them before. We have also been familiar with that discovery stage that's quickly followed by the questions of why, what's this, right? And as they age into toddlers, this world of curiosity and discovery become full of questions that honestly deserve answers, as they're exploring their world and their new perspectives, and learning about the world around them and how that they interact with the world. In this case, he's learning how to walk through, seeing through a hole in the bowl, and figuring out what does that do for his limitations and exploration of his environment. We as adults actually encourage this curiosity as they are young and hope that these children grow into being curious and creative adolescents and adults. Some do. However, for others, this discovery phase begins to stagnate, and the joy that is associated with creativity and discovery begins to fade. So, here, this might look vaguely familiar, but it's about to become more familiar to some of you. So what do you see? So this, to many people, when I showed this at Nationals, they said that this is a hat, this is a pat of butter, it's just a blob, different things, right? So part of what this indicates is that we begin to look at the world around us, and we put it into these pieces of all this connection of information. We begin to categorize the world around us. And we teach children to do this. But at some point in time, we cross this threshold of them seeing all the possibilities, and they begin to limit the seeing of these possibilities and converge their thinking into single identities and single options. So this is an example of us changing the way that they see the world around them. And it becomes really difficult for them to think outside the box. As a teacher, I get them again, and then I spend my first few weeks really pushing that out of them again. How to become creative. It's okay to take chances. It's okay to take risks. It's okay to be creative. I'll let you know when you've gone too far. By the way, you've never gone too far yet, right? And I just keep pushing and encouraging and have them reintroduce themselves to that aspect of them. But part of it is it's important for us to realize what our role as an adult that made this happen. So we have a little video here that I want to show you.
The sound, she'll get it.
My kind of important.
Try again, Becky.
Okay.
No?
Could you put your mic next to it?
Here, put my mic next to it. Is that an option?
Sure.
Like, I don't know how it's attached to me.
We can be creative.
I will figure it out. Just lean in, okay? This will be awesome. Yes, I'll be creative. Thank you. Thank you for coming up with problem solving. You're doing well. You're doing great.
You do not need to be here. You were excused.
And I said, stick to arithmetic. Just straight and grammar. I took their advice. And
Okay. I have to figure out how to make this work.
You got it? You got it. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So, that was a little clip from The Little Prince. This was a book that I read growing up, and it always helped to remind me, especially as I became an adult and started interacting with children more and became an educator. It's a book that helped to remind me what it's like to see the world from a child's perspective, and how as we become adults, we forget to look at the world through the lens of the children. We're so quick to place children in the mindset of how we view the world based on our biases, based on our experiences, based on the way that we've interacted with the world, that we forget to interact in the world of the child. And this is an important distinction to make, because if we're fostering creativity in our children, and that's going to be a part of problem solving, discovery, and to encourage those critical thinking skills, then we actually need to start paying attention to how are they seeing the world itself. So we as adults in our children's lives have an integral role to play in developing their creativity. We can either nurture it or we can stifle it. Okay, so convergent and divergent thinking. So when we're talking about seeing that first image as a hat, we were talking about that convergent thinking. And that's putting all the information that we see in the world and that we're putting it down into these categories, these little boxes. And that's something that, yes, it's an important aspect of thinking, and there is a place for it to happen. So it is an important aspect of thinking, and we do teach that as parents, we teach this, and as teachers, we do teach this aspect of it. But what we're talking about when we're dealing with creativity is more of this divergent thinking. This is using one's imagination within the creative thinking itself. It generates creative ideas by exploring many possible ideas, versus the convergent thinking is narrowing them down into a single solution. However, part of what I'm going to teach you tonight is something that we all do naturally as adults, but it's something that we have to teach our kids, and that is how we combine the two together, convergent thinking within divergent thinking. As problem solving is the combination of using both of these together, starting by generating a lot of solutions, and then looking to see what's actually probable based in these situations, whatever it might be, or possible based on what do we have available for us to use. Then from that, we can have our children work together with researching information, coming up with criteria, and then narrowing things down, right? So it's allowing them to expand before narrowing down. But often what has happened is we have not allowed them to expand. We've said, oh, look, you want to paint a picture, why don't you paint this picture? And then that's all they're going to be able to do is produce that one thing you've given them versus all the possibilities of what can they do if you just gave them the supplies. So when we combine divergent thinking and convergent thinking together, we are able then to help generate those ideas, elaborate, transform ideas, and then help our students to begin to develop their voice, their perspective, and their choice. We as adults can help foster these skills of critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity in our children. Okay, from NAGC. Parents and teachers play a huge role in providing opportunities for high ability children to develop and explore their creativity, both in traditional, that is art, music, creative writing, and inventions, so that's more that big C stuff, and then in the non-traditional, that is the critical thinking, problem solving, the competitions, that's the immediate thinking, the improvisation aspect of it, in their pursuits. And we're all here because we want to help our children in all of these avenues, right? But really, again, if we can't get through the critical thinking and problem solving, it's going to be very limiting for them to be able to produce inventions and the other higher big C, the big C stuff that we're looking into. So, curiosity, discovery, and questioning. So how do we cultivate this curiosity in a way that helps our children grow creatively? As adults, we need to model curiosity. So part of what I was saying before, when we forget what it's like to be a kid and discover the world for the first time, we're forgetting that these processes become so normalized to us that we forget that children don't know what to do with the information yet. So we model that curiosity with them. We further demonstrate how we can take action based on our questions and our world of discovery. How do we go about problem solving, right? And how do we go about creating? First, we model how we think, which means that we have to be metacognitively aware of what we are thinking, that those thought processes are happening in our brains first. So then we can teach that to the children. This is what we do. We think about our thinking. When we're reading, we're thinking about our thinking. When we're in nature, we're thinking about our thinking. And we're teaching the kids how to do that through questioning and guiding their curiosity. Then we work with them on doing the follow-through of seeking the answers to those questions. So, for example, when a little one asks you questions such as why do the leaves change color in some plants in some places and others don't, or your child just simply be why is the leaves changing color, it depends on really where they are in the sophistication of their observations and how much exposure they've had to things. Instead of just answering the question for them, you engage them in this process of discovery and curiosity. So part of it is asking them, that's a great question, what made you think of it? Maybe they did see leaves and it was an obvious connection, or maybe it's not, and they're tapping into something that happened earlier. But what's important is that you don't miss that first moment to ask them, what made you think of it? And what do you think the answer is, right? Because it's important that you ask them that. What do you think the answer is? And then, how do you think we can find out more? Then you're engaging the child in the problem-solving aspect of it. How do we do research and find answers? How do we do experimentation and find answers to that? This is all going to tap into their creativity and help them versus shutting them down, shutting down their creativity and their curiosity, which is giving them a direct answer. That's not to say you shouldn't always or never give them direct answers. Sometimes we have to. But you can teach them how we as adults formulate answers to our questions through research, experiments, and discussions. In other words, we must demonstrate how we transform curiosity and how we transform wonder into taking action. Because it's in our direct modeling as adults with them. And it doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter if they're this big or if they're teenagers trying to figure out how to problem solve in their lives, in the high school, and they're trying to figure out what do I need to do to be successful, to get in college and things like that. Engage them in that problem solving. Engage them in that research. Engage them in these processes together. Because that's going to actually help them to learn more by doing it with you versus you doing it for them or just telling them. While asking questions are important, searching for answers is more important in fostering this problem solving when spurring creativity. That's not always, sometimes the questions are the important thing. Depends on what we're doing. But in this aspect, we're talking about problem solving. And it's how do we find the answers to those questions. So being curious is part of that gifted experience and leads to creativity. We not only need to give our children permission to be curious and creative, but we need to model curiosity and creativity within our own lives. So while it is important that we engage with them in what they are curious about and what they're wondering about in the world, it's also important that we engage with them about what we are doing, what we are reading. Often in my classroom, those are the conversations that my students and I have with one another. Okay, what new discovery did you make over the weekend? What book are you reading? What are you interested in? Right? And we're having these conversations with one another. I have these same conversations with my college students too, because it's important for me as an educator that no matter what age the student is in front of me, that I'm engaging with them, both the interest in what they're learning about, what they're curious about, and that they see that I am also a lifelong learner, right? You don't have to be a lifelong learner as a parent, meaning that you're formally going to school, but it's that you're always seeking knowledge and making connections about the world around you, and that you're always seeking out new information as the world is growing and that we're trying to keep up with it. So we need to encourage children to ask questions and investigate things that do not make sense to them. As children are younger, most of the world does not make sense to them. As they get older, they begin to think they know everything. We've all experienced teenagers, whether firsthand or secondhand. They all begin to think that they know everything. But it's still important that we don't let go of that responsibility as the adult to help them make sense of the world within those connections. Because that's also integral for that creativity aspect, the critical thinking and the problem solving. So, this is important. When we're answering those questions or helping them to discover, this does not mean that they need an adult level specific precise, scientific answer for everything. You need to gauge how much information you give them based on their stage in development. They are still children. They are still learning. They are not adults as much as they are highly gifted and intelligent beings who are able to have these wonderful conversations with you and amazing insights. They are still children. And it's very important to remember that when we're dealing with our gifted students for me, gifted children for you, right? That we have to engage with them at that appropriate level for where they are in their stage in childhood development. So, gifted children make connections with everything, and much quicker, deeper than their age-level peers. And therefore, they are accelerated in the way that they learn and take in this information. But this is also an important thing. If they're accelerated in the way that they learn and take in information, that also gives more of a chance for these misunderstandings and misconnections and missed opportunities. Because if all we do is hand them a book and say, well, you can decode information, go read, you're going to be able to discover this world of opportunity and information, there's going to be a lot they do not know. And you might end up causing some future problems in their learning. So it's important for some of these things that we are doing this learning alongside of the children instead of just releasing them into this world of critical thinking, which will lead to creativity, right? So, for example, even if your third grader is interested in astronomy, right? They can possibly even decode the words of Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, maybe even regurgitate some of that information back to you. However, this does not mean that they understand it, because unless they've had physics and the higher levels of physics, they don't have the conceptual knowledge built yet to understand these things. So while they are curious about it, and you would gauge that curiosity based on them asking you a couple questions about the moon, that doesn't mean that we jump from questions about the moon to a brief history in time and let your child just go free and say, find her answers here. We have to scaffold these learning opportunities for them and engage in this curiosity and wonder with the child. This is going to help enrich the critical thinking, problem-solving skills, and lead to further creativity such as innovation and invention, right? So, we don't project them into everything about astrophysics at the age of 8. We can, however, especially if they show a propensity and curiosity to astronomy, find appropriate ways of engaging them in this study. You can watch documentaries. You can listen to talks by Neil deGrasse Tyson or attend a free public event with our Phoenix Astronomical Society. They have them monthly. You can visit the Challenger Space Center of Arizona, which recently moved nearby. You can attend ASU's Space Exploration Day or take a family trip to the Kitt Peak National Observatory, right? There are things that we can do that are low cost, but that are high engagement, and really are going to further that connection between your child and you within that world of exploration and discovery with one another. If your child still shows a keen interest, you can also look into joining astronomy clubs, purchasing a telescope, but try not to jump ahead in the process by forcing your perspective or your bias on them, right? They're curious about something, great, explore that with them. But just because you might be an astrophysicist doesn't mean that you have to teach them at the level of your conceptual understanding of things either, right? So it's leading them there gradually, but allowing them to lead you. Part of the creative, the inner dynamics between the parent and the child when we're dealing with creativity is following where the child is leading, observing the child within that world, and asking them the guiding questions and listening to their answers and trying to get through their head their perspective of the world as they see it and they're making sense to it. It is also important to engage with them and by everyday physics lessons, I mean like the stuff that we see in the world around us, right? I don't mean like actually do formal lessons in physics with your children. I suppose you can if that's what they're ready for. But what I mean is looking at the world around us, right? And looking to see how things move and how things work. And then discussing those things with them as it is developmentally appropriate for them. Because part of it is we have these teachable moments that happen when we're paying attention. And we do want to make sure that we're not missing those teachable moments too, but that doesn't mean you have to do a crash course in everything you've ever learned about the topic over your whole entire lifetime. As your child's knowledge grows from learning the fundamentals of physics and their application in everyday life to more about our planet and the universe, you can have them engage in further study that will then have meaning and be understood by them as it would be the right time and stage in their development. If you let them take the lead on this, that's going to help you. That doesn't necessarily mean, and you'll see later on, that I don't mean always take your child's lead in everything. If your child just had you beg for lessons, and you dumped tons of money into it, and they quit the second day in because it was harder, they wanted to be perfect. It doesn't mean you say, okay, honey, we're done. We'll get into that in a bit. Creativity can connect students to content and also increase their ability to sympathize, deepen, and extend their learning, right? Because creativity is really within this interplay of curiosity, discovery, problem solving, is really where we're getting these foundational skills to creativity. And this is very important that we don't fast track this for our kids. Because as they increase in their knowledge, they're going to also be able to increase in their ability to synthesize, deepen, and extend their learning in all areas. Because the world is has interplay of all these different things that we're interacting with around us. And gifted children's brains work in a way that they make connections to everything, more than what we do. If you're not, well, if you're a gifted adult, then you do it more than they do. But if you're not a gifted adult, their processes of making connections are very similar to your process as an adult, and making connections to all the stimuli around them. And they're trying to make sense of it. So they do need us, the adults, here to help them along that way, which is why asking them questions along the way is going to be rather important. So, by fostering curiosity, we're doing a few things. One, we are encouraging this world of discovery to actually continue for them, letting them engage in the environments around them. As children make more and more connections, they are learning, right? Which helps them, in turn, helps them understand how things work, how they can improve things. This aspect of curiosity leads to problem solving. Improving on things that already exist is one aspect of creativity. Creativity isn't always creating something brand new that never existed. It is also changing something, transforming something. It can be elaborating on something. And having them engage within this natural environment is going to help bring those out for them in ways that you could never try and force on them. Problem solving and decision making processes also utilize, and the decision making process that it utilizes are linked with curiosity and are also an important component of creativity. Creativity is therefore demonstrated in the way that one solves problems, makes connections to stimuli in the world around them, and then communicates these connections to other people. This is often an important part. You might not recognize the way your child's communicating it to you, hopefully you do. But part of it is they might not be communicating what they see in a way that you're familiar with or the way that you see things. And it is, again, it's important that you forego your bias and your perspective when you're engaging with the child and finding out what they're looking at or how they see things. And then part of it is figuring out how are they communicating this to you, even if it doesn't look like what your schema in your head would appear to be. So, like here, this, looking at itself, wasn't sure that this was the fort, but until the child started building and coming to life, then we were able to figure it out. Had we just stuck with the drawing, maybe very perceptible people would be able to be like, that was clearly the fort before the child started creating it. But it was in the communication process with the child that we discovered that this is actually the fort that they have drawn schematic of, and then they're going to turn around and build the fort. It is important that we continue to encourage curiosity and creativity, as curiosity leads to better problem solving, which is an essential life skill. When tied purposefully to examining and engaging in the world around us, creativity can be a window to improving critical thinking skills. So here she's taken math tiles, and she was doing math with them in the slide before. But here now she's taken the math, she's had fun, she's played with the tangograms, and you can see she's at the point of now creating something new. And she's 3. So you can see at this point in time she's making an original creation herself with math materials. But that from here, then she's going to extend out, and based on this person, on her teacher actually helps them to figure out measurements and things like that too, which is cool. Not saying that every child will be that way, but that's this particular child with their interaction. That's what they do when they're learning. But had there not been the opportunity for the child to play and make that creation, then we would have never gotten to that further enrichment of being able to incorporate math back in with it. So, allowing her to play first. So this next one is going to be an example of problem solving which led to creativity for 2 highly gifted children. And we're going to do a video again. Okay, so this is back
Hey, we're Red Link from Good Mythical Morning. We're playing a show in Phoenix on November 21st at the Keur at the theater. Come see us. Go to redlinklive.com to get tickets.
17 brain surgeries.
Correct.
Wow. I'm looking at Lily, we've never known that.
No.
So let's go back to her journey, when it all began.
She was 2.5 months old when we took her in for her 2-month checkup. She had this really funny head tilt.
Okay.
It basically looked like her head was connected to her body by her ear. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
And so I asked the doctor about that and a few friends, and they're like, oh, maybe it's, this, that, or the other thing. She checked her neck muscles, and everything seemed to check out okay with that. So we went and did an MRI and of her head. And the pediatrician actually called me back after hours that day and just in tears telling me that she never thought this would be our journey. And so that's when she told me about hydrocephalus. And I was like, wait, what? So her first shunt was placed at 4 months of age, but she was quickly reacting to it. She was actually allergic to the shunt. So the machine that's supposed to save her life, her body rejects on a general basis. And so that's part of the reason she's had as many surgeries as she's had. But from the time she was 4 months old to 16 months old, we basically lived in the hospital in Helen DeVos because she had 12 surgeries between the time frames. So for the majority of her skin count.
How do you explain what hydrocephalus is?
The easiest way is all of our bodies have something called cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. It's just kind of the fluid in your brain that helps protect you from bumps and bruises and that type of thing. For hydrocephalus, what happens is there's many causes to it. So I know her cause as to what did it is aqueductal stenosis. That's a big technical term to say there's a clog in her brain because your fluid starts in your brain, goes down your spinal cord, and then back up again, and kind of the body absorbs it and everything. Unfortunately, there was a clog in hers, and so it filled up the ventricles inside your brain. And so that her brain grew bigger, and at 4 months of age, that's when the pediatrician said, something's not right, you need to go back.
Right. So when was her last surgery, the 17th surgery?
The 17th surgery was just this year, March.
In March, really? What was that like for you, Willow? Was it scary?
Little.
Do you remember much about it?
No.
That's good too. And the sense mom, that's good too. So what's your prognosis?
Her prognosis is actually really, really good. I mean, at this point in time, from what we were originally told to now, things have totally changed and gone different ways. But her prognosis, as you can tell, she's pretty much looking like a normal, neurotypical child. So for her, she'll still have to continue facing surgery after surgery after surgery. So however that many will be for her, we don't know.
Right.
There's always, when you're doing brain surgery, the cause that something could happen. But hoping that nothing does, she's got a pretty good prognosis.
This is a video for learning how to walk?
Yes, yep, because she was very delayed. She had low muscle tone, actually, and so we did physical therapy for her. I mean, she wasn't that far behind, and in the grand scheme of everything, she learns quick.
I say now, obviously you would never know. And you're going into what grade? First grade, she passed kindergarten with flying colors.
Flying colors, right?
You don't have a book. You wanted people to know, because you have friends, you probably explain to your friends what's going on with you, right?
Well, how many friends did you have visit you this year in the hospital? You had a few, huh?
Yeah.
But how many Boston?
Two.
Hospital.
Two friends? About 5 you had. Yeah, you have about 5 friends. See, you forgot already, huh?
So tell us about your book.
Well, Willow, I kept her home an extra day after the surgery, and I said, hey, Willow, her friends had a lot of questions about what is hydrocephalus, her scar, does she feel the pain, typical kid questions. And so I said, hey, Willow, you're going to go to school in a day, you want to write a book. And in my mind, I'm thinking like old school. When we were in school and wrote a book, you wrote it down on a piece of paper, you drew your own picture, you stapled it all together, you brought it in, handed it to your teacher, right? That's what I was thinking. This girl dreams big. Like, not stopping her. So when she said write a book, we wrote an outline, wrote out our pages, and I was going to then divide them up on each page and have her draw pictures. She goes, hey, Mom, let's publish it. Can't publish the book. And she goes, why not? Because there's a classmate of hers at school whose father's an opera illustrator. And so she kind of had a little inspiration there, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so she said, put it out on Facebook and have people help me. Okay, sure, we'll do it. And that's what started the entire thing.
So we got a book out. It's called Willow's Last Surgery. Where can people get the book?
Amazon.
Amazon. Okay, and you have a walk coming up and then a big trip.
We do.
Okay.
So, this is a story about, let me get back over here. Of course, it jumped out. I'm sorry, pardon me for just a moment. I'll tell the story about those. Okay, so this is the story about Willow, and then what Willow did is Willow approaches the world. She's a highly gifted girl, despite her numerous brain surgeries. And she approaches the world from this position of always caring about others. Her social-emotional intelligence is extraordinarily high. And what had happened, she was very nervous for the interview, so that's why Mom did all the talking. But what had happened was she didn't get to start the school year with everyone else. And she was really nervous about not how they would think of her, but nervous about her classmates. She was worried about their classmates and wanted them to feel comfortable with what she was going through. Because with the surgeries, she has shaved head, right? She has all these things and will have interesting haircuts. And these would be new classmates for her. So she didn't want them to worry about her. And she was brainstorming because her parents worked with her on these on brainstorming and problem solving schemas. They were working with her on how do you want to talk to your classmates? You know, and Mom was at first thinking that it was going to be simple, that they would go in together, Mom would hold her hand, and they would sit down and talk to the teacher. And then the teacher would tell the class, and then maybe they'd sit down together and tell the class. So Willow had this idea of, yeah, we could do that, but no, Mom never told her, so Mom never actually gave her any of these options. Willow had this idea, as Mom had mentioned, to write a book, and she did. She wrote that first book, the first book to bring in and reach her classmates. But then she decided that it needed to be more, that more kids should know, not the story because it's her story, but more kids should know the story because it's the story of anyone with this medical condition. And she wanted to actually be able to help any child who encounters these children. So what she did was she brainstormed the whole entire story. She did the storyboard. She decided, as you heard in the interview, that she wanted to get published. She thought of the way that she could go about getting the information to get published. And the parents just encouraged it by opening up the possibilities of let's explore this together, taking the lead of the child and following the child down this path and this journey. So Willow wrote the story, storyboarded it, and also helped figure it out. Her older brother, Evan, is the one who came on to do the illustrations, but he had to do them exactly how she wanted to. She just at the time felt that he had a better artistic skill. Lo and behold, at 8, she just won, you know how we do our district art fair? Hers was just sold to their district this past spring, so she eventually developed that skill too. But what was really incredible about her journey is that this journey that she went on was all led by her. And that her parents, her family, her environment allowed her and nurtured her in this. Instead of stifling it and saying, no, you stop after drawing the one page or writing the one page thing, they said, okay, let's explore this together. And then they've been able to help so many other people doing that. That's not to say that every time your child has an idea that you should go out and get it published. It's not what I'm saying either. But what I'm saying is that both of these kids are gifted kids. That by following these gifted kids and the way that their minds think, the way that they make connections, you're going to open up a greater world of possibility for them to problem solve, to critically think, and to create than what we would by saying no, or forcing on them our perception of what should have been done in those particular moments. So that leads us to this. Problem solving is an integral part of the creative experience. So, building creative problem-solving skills. Is it big enough? Can you guys see that? Okay. So, these are some of the ways that we can build creative problem-solving skills. And this is training to develop them would include things like brainstorming, such as encouraging idea generation in a criticism-free environment. Very important that it's brainstorming. Brainstorming is idea generation. Brainstorming, when we're generating these ideas don't have to have a value placed on them yet. We're just coming up with all the possibilities. That's that divergent thinking that we were addressing before. There is a place later on where we absolutely do evaluate. But this first one isn't evaluative. This first one is just generating. Then we have this heuristic ideation, which is forcing together two unrelated concepts to discover more relationships. So this can be fun, such as, how is a spoon like a chair? I don't know, they're gonna come up with different things, and they might ask you what chair, whatever it is, but you're gonna come up with these different types of associative thought processes that the kids are gonna drag you on. Or it could be, how is an elephant like a raindrop? Or how is time like a cloud, right? And you can come up with these different things and have students think about them, or your children think about them. Definitely creativity modeling by all the adults in their lives, their parents and teachers. By modeling how we create things, whether it's cooking dinner and how we're creating that meal together, or we're creating that grocery list when we're going to the grocery store and we're meal planning for the week, to figuring out our outfits for the next day, whatever it is, those small mundane things that become natural for us. To children, it's a world of possibility to engage them within these thought processes, because again, we're talking in that little creativity that can go into big ways, that can end up leading into big creativity. Exploring, discovering, and understanding that the world integrates information and problem solving across all areas, and the world is not separated into subjects necessarily. This is an important thing to be able to do, to take these moments with your children and be able to explore all these possibilities of where we have them, not in a way that you're giving them a formal lesson. Please do not give them a formal lesson on everything at all times. You will overload them. You will burn them out. But in the appropriate way, based on where their curiosity is leading them, is what's going to lead you back into that creativity. Build self-advocacy by helping them believe in their own ability to be creative. Just like in the video that we saw, not the last one, but the first one from The Little Prince, where the adults all shot him down and said that he should stick to the subjects and not do art, right? That was a little thing, but it was actually an example from the artist, from the author's own life too. But part of it is knowing that we need to help them believe in their ability to be creative. That does not mean you lie to them and you overpraise them for every little thing they do either. It means that you appropriately encourage them. That's great, honey. Can you do another one for me? That's fine. You know, question assumptions. It is important for children to learn what questions to ask than to learn. It is more important for children to learn what questions to ask than it is for them to learn to recall answers. So question their assumptions. If they have an assumption about the world or the way the world works, again, we don't launch into full, huge scientific explanations that are above their head, but we also don't just let them assume that's the way the world works. It's finding those appropriate teachable moments, and how are we going to do that to help them? Because as we're teaching them those things, as we're guiding them and leading them those things, they're going to make another connection to another connection to another connection that can one day lead into an innovation or an invention or a new artwork or a new type of music. We're preparing our kids for a world that has yet to be invented, one that we in this room cannot conceive. We don't know what it's going to be like in 20 years, because I know that 20 years ago, that the world I'm living in now, I could have never envisioned this reality, right? And I'm guessing most of you, although I don't know your fields of work, probably didn't envision everything that we have in this current reality either. Which means 20 years from now, we can't necessarily predict what that world is going to be, but we do know that critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, these things are going to be integral to it, and along that comes that problem solving, and then being able to make those connections to the world around us. So we also need to reflect upon the ideas and concepts from different points of view, because the world that we're in is getting more and more diverse, right? Because we're having connections to more people from all over the world. We have to make sure that we're engaging with our kids from looking at these different points of view. Diversify their perspectives on content, on information, on the world that they see. It's not always going to be from a myopic, first-person point of view of how they see the world is the only way of seeing it. No more than you as their parent, the way that you see the world is the only way you see it. We have to engage them in these cultural events, things like that. Take them to festivals. These are going to help them see. Multicultural children's literature books would be a great way of doing it. But having them interact with these other perspectives. Part of what I wanted to show you was the creative problem-solving process. And this was the process that Willow's parents naturally do. So like I said, from that video, what they ended up doing is something that they naturally do anyways in that particular household. Father does computers, mother is educator. So from that, they do this with all of their kids. The oldest one's 19 now, the youngest one's like 5. And this is just part of what they do. So this is what they did with Willow, which is how they ended up with a book. So part of the first thing is the child has this question, right? And so we're going to start by, or problem shoot. Problems are actually very big. And we can start by just gathering information. If we're dealing with problems, we want to identify what is the actual problem itself that we're dealing with. We want to define it. We can't define it based on that myopic perception of it. We actually have to open it up to exploring and gathering more information about it so we can understand it from multiple points of view. Then we can start to really define what is the actual problem itself. Once we can define the actual problem itself, then we can start looking at possible solutions. This is idea generation. We're not evaluating yet. We're just coming up with different ideas. Then we're going to analyze those possible solutions, select the best solutions based on the probability of what could happen, should happen, or resources, what do we have available. And then we decide the next course of action. This problem, this creative solving process model can be used from anything from personal relationships. You know, they had a fight with their friend. Okay, let's examine this fight that you had with your friend, to the fight you had with your sibling, to I'm struggling on homework, or I don't know what I'm supposed to do for this project. It could be anything. I don't know what I want to do. So it could be related to school. It could be related to life. It could be related to, as we saw the children playing outside in the dirt, and then all of a sudden they had those things of grass. They were going to do a science experiment next. The children wanted to. They wanted to find out the different ways from this grass, what's going to make it grow, what's going to kill it more. The children are the ones who wanted to do it. So part of it were the parents engaged with them within this process to figure out what should we do, what have we learned, what more can we learn, where else can we go for that information. So this is an important process that we as teachers use all the time with our kids. And here's the thing, as adults we do this automatically. This is something that we do naturally for ourselves. But unless we're actually thinking metacognitively about how we are interacting with the world around us, we forget that this is very natural to what we do in the processes we do. So when I was mentioning earlier that we need to model these things for our children, this is part of what we model. And it's okay to actually spell it out and break it down for them. Write it out. Have us brainstorm and write these things together. Eventually the kids become good at it, and you can have them do it without your guidance. But at first, you do guide them. Even when they come to me in middle school, I re-guide them. By the time they leave me in middle school, I don't need to anymore. They got it. They know how to do it, right? But unless they were taught this when they were younger and it became something that was integral to their existence and how they perceive the world around them, it is something that is explicitly taught to help them. Because what it does do is it helps to create new ideas or transform existing ideas that are already there. So once we break down the problem, to understand it, define it in its parameters, generate ideas, we can potentially solve the problem, ideas that could potentially solve the problem. We can evaluate them for the most effective, and then from there go on to the next steps. And the cycle continues and continues and continues theoretically. Or maybe you did solve it the first time. But the idea is that it's an ever-growing. So creative people, I had said before that adults, we do this automatically. Creative people also do this automatically. So they did this when they were trying to determine their course of action when tackling a project or implementing idea. Yes, there's a typo. I'm sorry. I was searching for it earlier. I knew I had it. Good thing I find it again. There it is, right there. So gifted students, at kind of young school age, really it's that moment that they first ask you those questions and they start leading you in this process that you can do it. So when a child comes up to me, whether it's my 2-year-old nephew or my 19-year-old nephew or any of them in between or any of the children that I teach or my college students, that I work with them through their thought process. Let's identify the problem. Can you identify what might have caused this problem? What are all the different things that we need to look at? Who are the different stakeholders involved, right? And we really examine every aspect of this. And then we start to generate possible solutions. Once we generate possible solutions, we are able to implement them. And what you end up with are children, whether they're young or adult-sized, who are able to actually be more independent, more resilient, and be able to think more critically and start to solve more problems for themselves. And then they start to create a better world for themselves and hopefully us one day, right? Because we need that. Or what's coming next. So, creativity is the freedom of expression. And an individual's unique perspective, ideas, ingenuity, interpretation, or their opinion. That doesn't mean that all opinions are created equal. But it is important that I have it up here because it's really about that individual's perspective and how they're seeing the world and how they're communicating that to all of us. So when we're looking at this artwork that we have all over this room, this is how these particular children saw something and decided to depict it and communicate it to all of us. This is their way of showing their unique perspective, their unique ideas, their ingenuity, and how did they make that come to life. Their interpretation of whatever the assignment was, whatever the theme was, whatever the symbolism was that they're putting in it. And some of them, they're really sharing their opinion. They're sharing with us their stances on the world, especially when we're dealing with social justice art and things like that. This is how they communicate to us. And we owe it to them, these children, our future, to pay attention to that and listen to their voices. And to encourage the creativity within that. So, we here in this room, as parents, educators, and administrators, can help our gifted students think creatively using a wide range of idea creation techniques, creating new and worthwhile ideas, and elaborating, refining, analyzing, and evaluating one's own ideas in order to improve and maximize creative efforts. Children need to be shown that there are often multiple paths to solutions and understanding. They should be encouraged to explore different areas and pursue a variety of interests without the pressure of excellence. And this is important. The end goal isn't always excellence. The end goal is the path. It's the journey. The journey is very important when we're dealing with creativity. The journey is very important when we're dealing with critical thinking. The journey is very important when we're dealing with problem solving. And all of these are integrated together when we're talking about creativity. Sometimes, yes, we do need excellence, but if that is always your goal, your children are going to stop producing for you. They're going to stop creating for you. They're going to be like the man in the first video where it does become a hat and then you forget that you ever once knew what it was like to be a child or how to create. Use excellence when excellence does needs to be the goal, but excellence should not always be the goal, especially when we're dealing with children. That isn't to say that you just let them be lazy either. Don't just let them be lazy. But you do give them time to just be bored. Absolutely. Bored children are the most creative children I know. If you don't fill that time for them, they will find a way to do it, sometimes mischievously, sometimes brilliantly, right? Observe that, please, be a parent still, but it is one of those things, right? They don't always have to be pursuing to be the best, they're already perfectionists as gifted children. It's part of who they are, it's part of their identity. Putting that extra pressure on them to excel at everything they do is going to make them burn out soon. Do not do that to your babies if you can help it, please, right? Find what you should be helping them be excellent as. If your child's a pianist and they're amazing at it, absolutely encourage them to keep going. Don't let them quit the moment they come across a challenging piece that they can't do. You keep encouraging them to do it. But if your child is totally tone deaf and has no musical talent whatsoever, don't expect them to be excellent at it and then make it so they're crying because they're trying to do something because you told them to and not something that they're actually capable of doing no matter how much you're trying to teach them and guide them. Find that balance. So, creative thinking is an essential skill for our gifted learners to develop to reach their full potential as adults, right? All of us adults, do we agree that we use creative thinking in our lives every single day? Good. I like the head nods. This is good. I like affirmation. Thanks. So it is an important thing. So here, take a screenshot of this one so you can actually blow it up on yourself a little bit later. I'm going to try and read us through to the best of what I can. Okay. So what we have are 5 core attitudes. They're prevalent in all people who are creative. So what this author did is she took a study over the course of years, over the course of many books, and she studied creative people in all aspects of creativity, from inventors to innovators to artists to dancers to musicians, anybody who's creative in any way, she studied them and she looked for commonalities with them. What is it that they do that helps them to be successful as creators? She came back with 5 core attitudes of creativity, which is cool. I just got to hear her speak at the National Gifted Conferences weekend too, so that was wonderful. And the first one we have is self-discipline. That in this core attitude of creativity, students, children have to be able to develop self-discipline. Be able to develop as key here though. They don't come already self-disciplined, right? You have to help them. We have to guide them. As much as we want to think our gifted children are capable of operating as little adults because they're smart, that doesn't mean they aren't. You have to teach them how to have self-discipline. So this core attitude about doing creative work includes deliberate, repetitive practice, motivation, and setting goals for their successes. So repetitive practice, if excellence is the goal in that case. Repetitive practice is this: we can't all wake up and become concert pianists. It takes hours and hours and hours. We're talking 10,000 hours of repetition, of practice, to be able to become that level of excellent at something. So I don't know about you, but I'm guessing in your child's schedule, they don't have 10,000 hours to become excellent at everything. So you gotta pick and choose with your child too. But if it is important to them and they're passionate about it, it becomes much easier to work with them on it. But it does take repetitive practice, and for repetitive practice to take place, they have to be motivated. So you can help them with that. You can discuss discipline and the importance of setting goals, and you can help your children create long and short-term goals for projects, or for whatever this task is that they're trying to accomplish, or this dream that they have to accomplish. And you can talk to them about how did you foster that within yourself. What was it like for you when you were developing a talent, or you were developing a passion, or in your work as you were working on the project? What does that look like for you? And we teach them about this self-discipline and how it works in the real world. Openness to experience is the next one. An attitude of openness to experience refers to the fact that creative people pay attention to the small things, and they are able to view the world by seeing the old as if it were something new. Children are excellent at paying attention to the small things. You're teaching a lesson, all of a sudden they're like, there's a bug back there in the corner. Right, I was talking about something that was up here. Yeah, but back there in the corner on the floor, underneath your desk, there was a bug. Okay, we'll stop for a minute. We're gonna go get the bug out of the room, set him free, because they don't want the bug to die. So then next thing you know, we're making a bug trap and setting a bug free. And then eventually we're gonna get back to the lesson that was at hand. But part of it is then we start to figure out there was a bird that came in the other week. That was an interesting distraction from our reality. Yes, don't worry, the bird left. He follows breadcrumbs, in case you're curious. So the bird left. He left the room. But yeah, so it's part of that. But it's paying attention to those things and using those opportunities to get into the lens of the child and perspective of the children, and to figure out how are they seeing the world and how can we engage with them within that to help come up with that. We had to problem solve to get a bird out of the room. We had to problem solve when we found a baby bird that had fallen last spring, and we needed to figure out how can we get the bird to a shelter. These are moments, you helped me with that, thank you. There are moments where we have to come up with these ideas, and they happen at that moment for that discovery. They're natural learning opportunities. Don't miss out on those with your children. But if we're not open up to paying attention to the small things along with them, we're not going to be open to the experience of learning as it naturally happens, and that's going to stop them from being creative. So let's make sure we're open to it. Have a discussion with your children about accepting others and not judging one another. Foster respect and challenge them to find multiple points of view. Risk-taking. Risk-taking enables one to try new things. Without trying new things, we would not be able to create. Your children tend to be perfectionists. It's part of being gifted. Sometimes it immobilizes me. I get it. But I've had to work through it, and look where I'm at now. This is kind of cool, right? So, well, for me, it's kind of cool. I don't know if it's cool for you. But it's kind of cool for me that I get to be here hanging out with you right now. But risk-taking is a part of that, trying something new, something you haven't tried before. If we shut them down because every idea that comes out of their mouths are not an excellent idea, and every piece of art isn't the best thing you've ever seen, they're going to stop trying to produce. They're going to stop trying to create. They're going to stop trying to innovate. We need to make sure we are not stopping it before they have a chance to keep learning and growing as individuals and synthesizing information from all aspects of the world around them, including in school. We need to make sure that we are allowing them to take appropriate intellectual risks. We're not talking, risky behavior risks. We're talking appropriate intellectual risks. So provide your children with the environment where intellectual risk-taking is encouraged. Encourage the freedom to take intellectual and creative risks. I just have to read that. I'll move back. I just couldn't see it. Tolerance for ambiguity. Nothing is black and white. Nothing at all. The ability to keep contradictory ideas in your mind simultaneously builds a tolerance for ambiguity. That's where the world is not always going to be crystal clear of what you should do. This is where that problem-solving cycle comes back in again, right? If we can start building a tolerance for ambiguity, And that sometimes we have to discover this, and the world is messy, and we're going to learn through this process and come out stronger and better for it. That's going to be helpful. So role-playing ambiguous situations is something you absolutely can do as a parent. Build an environment that encourages opposing viewpoints. The first time that they hear that the world doesn't always go according to their perception and how they think it is, if we wait till they're in school to hear that, we end up with a lot of meltdowns in school, right? I mean, because they all of a sudden they're in a class with 20, 30 other kids and like, wait, the world doesn't revolve around me? Don't do that to your babies, please. Help them to realize that you too as a parent have a point of view that might be different than theirs. And explore those together. It doesn't mean one's wrong and one's right necessarily, although usually as parents you're more right than your child. But it does mean, however, that the exploration and the discussion is important because the discussion is going to build a group of trust. So, in this collaborative creativity, the people doing the creating must trust one another. Working in groups creates interdependence as each member has a role to play. In a family, you are all part of this collaborative group. Teaching your children how to interact in this environment will set them up for success outside of it. Include them in decision making and problem solving in these conversations. Well, there are certain things we exclude them from, but in general, don't exclude them from these important aspects of your life. Include them in it because they might come up with some amazing perspectives that you as the parent needed to actually hear so that you can be more open to experience and you can actually understand that there's more ambiguity situations than what you thought before. But it absolutely is going to lead to them trusting more, and as your children get older, this is going to be very helpful for you as a parent too. That you've established that trust and these ground things with them before they're younger. So, 2. To encourage these attitudes, you can implement some strategies outlined in this presentation by fostering their growth in your child. And I'm going to give you a bunch more, don't worry. However, another thing that creative people do is have an area where they write their ideas down. Notebook or sketchbook are handy to have in hand. And this encourages ideas to be marked before they are forgotten and allows them to be connected to one another. So I myself am always creating. My brain never shuts off. And I drive like an hour and a half to come here every day, hour and a half home. So I'm on the road for like 3 hours a day. It's actually how much I love coming here and teaching these kids and history periods. But I constantly have all these ideas going through my mind. So I do a lot of voice typing to myself, like a lot of voice texting, and I generate my ideas. And then I go home and I have a different notebook for whatever it might be. So if it's, I'm going to combine literature with history, I have a notebook for that. Oh, I have this great idea for social justice for my college students, I do that. Oh, I have this great idea for a new piece of artwork I want to do for myself. Okay, I have a notebook for that. I'm making a wedding dress for a friend right now. I have a notebook for that. It depends on what aspect of my life that I'm working on my personal creativity, and I get inspiration from all around me. I have notebooks for everything. And then I carry them around like in a tote bag, and then there's colored pencils and things like that. I'm not asking that you do that for all your kids, but I'm saying it's so helpful. It is so helpful because then I have a place to put it down. And I can flip back through it and find these connections and things like that. And then I'm able to use that. And sometimes the students sit with me and we look through our notebooks together. They have some, we have some. We come up with new ideas. And we come up with new innovations and new ways of exploring the world around us. And it's this really cool thing that we're able to do with one another. So I do encourage you, if nothing else, to get a notebook for your child and just see what might go into it, right? It's a very cool thing to be able to do. Here we have our friend Da Vinci. I'm not saying that all of us can be a Da Vinci. This is not what I'm implying either. But what Da Vinci did was very important. He did a lot of these things. He put things that had nothing to do with one another on pages adjacent to see if naturally they would start forming connections in his mind. And from that is how he got new innovations. From that is how he got new ideas. From that is how he made new inventions. So it could be, well, these are actually kind of interrelated, but he would do that. And then he would flip through it later and he would see these parallels between the two. Sometimes it's going to be observational. So here, he's observational into invention, into innovation. But sometimes that's what your child's notebook might be full of, or just the observations of the world around them. As a parent, how great of a tool is that for you? To be able to flip through that notebook with them and see through their eyes and their perspective, what are they examining in the world around them? What are they curious about? And from there, you can have conversations with them and figure out what might they want to learn next. Okay. this goes back into that intellectual risk thing again. In that intellectual risk, we're also talking about helping them understand that mistakes are a part of the learning process. This goes back into the perfectionist tendencies again. Mistakes are normal. Mistakes are in fact encouraged, because if we're not making mistakes, then we're not learning through the process. And if we're trying to help our kids learn, if we're trying to help our children learn, then we have to be okay with them making mistakes. You as a parent need to be okay with them making mistakes, otherwise the child's not going to be okay with them making mistakes, right? We're talking small things, because if they can get that trust back in on the small things, they'll trust you when it's the bigger things later on in life. But it is absolutely part of the learning process. It's important that they start to build resilience, because if they cannot build resilience, they are going to have a lot of setbacks in their future lives, okay? A lot of them. So hopefully we can start to not encourage them. It's not like saying free for all, make mistakes all you want, but what it's saying is helping them to know it's okay if you do. You're still going to love them, you're still going to be there for them, you're still going to support them, and more to the point, you're going to learn through them. And you can guide them through that learning process. How can we learn through that mistake that you made so that in the future we can make different choices? So there's that. Almost done, I promise. Okay. We have to also allow them the freedom to engage in creative thinking by taking, I just said that, and trying new things. First, in this place of discovery, that they form more neural connections, which leads them to greater learning, where they're then able to grow in the knowledge of the application of these higher critical thinking skills. So, this one here, I'm just going to show you this. Take a screenshot. Just do the screenshot of that one. It'll be easier for you. Because I'm going to go through quickly, because I know there's some other stuff that you might want to get to in here. So there are these ways that creativity happens, these creative skills that we can build within our kids. One of them is going to be fluency, and that's helping them generate many, many, many ideas. Brainstorming is going to be one of those ways that we can help them generate many ideas. Flexibility is helping them come up with different types of ideas. We can generate many ideas, or we can come up with different types. Sometimes we can do both interchangeably. Originality is going to be the unusualness. The uniqueness of an idea is going to be the originality. Not everything your child comes up with is going to be original, but that doesn't mean it's not creative. If it's not original, it still can be creative, because maybe it can be a transformation idea. Maybe it's going to be a moment where we can alter that and transform it into something new, into something better. Or maybe it's something where we can elaborate on it and make it more in-depth and improve on it in that way. So fluency, generate multiple ideas. Flexibility, look, I'll try to go slow for you. Oh, kind of slow. Look at something from a different angle or point of view. Shift to an opposing viewpoint. Putting yourself in someone else's shoes. That's going to be part of the flexibility. Take my cue off, you guys. Originality, generating new and unusual ideas. It's the unique, unexpected. It's the pinnacle of creativity. Is generally what we think of when we think creativity. We're thinking originality, but it's important that you know it's not just that. It's also these other things. It's what most of us think of then, and it's most difficult for some to achieve, but it can be reinforced. Elaboration, adding details to or extending ideas, extending thinking by answering. What else? Adding to it, extending or expanding, amplifying, focusing or adding more details, embellishing. And then transformation, altering existing ideas, taking turns, adding onto a story, drawing, or a project, looking at a piece of art instead of copying it. Can you change it? Can you alter it? And alter, changing, making over, or renovating something altogether are ways of going through transformation. So, practical ways to cultivate creativity in your gifted child. Figured you guys probably know all this. So children learn, develop, and demonstrate creative thinking through play. So this first way. So I have them as subheadings in the ways that you can do this. So this subheading is children learn, develop, and demonstrate creative thinking through play. So here's ways that you can play with them that are going to generate creativity. Do not overload their schedules is one of the important things. If every moment of their life is scheduled, there's never going to be time for them just to be. If they can't be, they're not going to be able to create as well. So you need to make sure, that's not to say don't have activities. Activities are great. I wanted to learn how to dance. I asked my parents if I could. They said, sure, but you gotta figure out how you're going to do that. It was very interesting what I was able to come up with, to be able to figure out how I could get dance lessons. But my parents depended on me to figure out how to research that and discover that process along myself. But that didn't mean that everything I came up with, they said, sure, you can go ahead and do that. They limited what it was because they wanted to make sure I also had downtime. So make sure we have unstructured, unplanned time. Help your child figure out how to just be with themselves in those moments, in the quiet of the room. What is it that they do with their time, right? Especially if they're bored, what do they do with their time? Hopefully, eventually we get to the point where we're creating when we're bored and not just being genius. Giving them access to the supplies to create is rather important. And then allowing them to be themselves and watch to see what happens. Observe them as they are playing. It's really fascinating to see what kids do when they're, it's that thing, that adage of when they're making noise, you're okay, but all of a sudden they get quiet and you kind of get worried about what's going on with your kids and go and investigate. Usually those are those really great moments where they're actually creating something new, and then we're observing that happen in that real time. It's really cool. Then engage and play with them, right? You can have family game night. Family game night is amazing for creativity. And family game night, you're teaching them strategy. You're teaching them how to take turns. You're teaching them teamwork and how to work in these groups with other people. How to have this ambiguity, that not everyone can win. And that sometimes you are going to be the one who loses because we're not going to always let you cheat, right? This is a kind of an important thing. Making up stories together, especially if it's continuous stories where I start the story and then you continue and then you continue and you continue. It's a great activity to do to help your child. You can watch a how-to video with them and then try it together. As they get older or more proficient, you can have them do it alone. They want to learn something new? Great, let's just go learn it. Let's do it. You can have them create their own videos, podcasts, or have them create their own games. Create art, music, dances together, and invent and innovate with one another. So this is really cool. And invent and innovate doesn't always mean create something brand new. It can sometimes be that transformational stuff, right? It's come up with some ideas, useful, practical things, and sometimes it can just be fun, engaging things. Another way that we can help them become creative is to explore the world around us by being in nature. Nature is a very creative thing. It's a very creative place to be, and it helps to inspire creativity. Be with your children in nature, or let them just be in nature. They are naturally inquisitive. They make connections quickly, form schemas, and an understanding of the natural world. You can take them to the zoo, aquarium, park, on a walk, in your own backyard, and engage with them in the world that they see. Ask them about that. Ask them what they're discovering. Ask them what they're thinking. Some of my best lessons, even with kids as old as 6th graders, let's just go take a nature walk together and we can go on a science nature journey. It's amazing what they discovered that they never knew existed, even though it's right there on the playground. And then camp, be outdoors, go to the park, play outside. Be in nature is going to always inspire creativity. It's very cool how it happens. You don't even have to try hard. Children develop creativity through questioning, listening, and learning by doing. Teach them how to solve problems. Do not always solve their problems for them. Sympathize that they are having a problem and that it's tough, but then ask them how they might solve it. You can help them solve it, but don't always jump in and do it, right? Ask them about that. Sometimes they just, as adults, just want to tell you that they're having a tough time. And sometimes they do want your help. Or they just want someone else to know that they're going through a struggle. Eventually it gets to the point that they just love solving these problems on their own because it empowers them. It makes them feel very successful. Instead of solving their problems, engage them in this process. Whether it's homework, activities, schedules, or social relationships, engage them within the process of it. Instead of answering questions, it's supposed to say ask. Ask them more questions. Don't just always answer their questions. Give them some more guided questions to help engage their thinking a little bit more and see where that puts them in the problem solving. Encourage them to seek answers through exploration and making connections with other things that they already know. Instead of just asking Alexa or Google what the answer is, start actually building that schema of the connections that you know. Let's see. When did this happen in history? Great. So when the thing you're asking me about happened before or after? Okay, after. So, okay, can you give me more information? What else was happening around that time? Right? And you can start giving them guiding questions that are going to help them start to make more of these connections and come up with more answers for themselves. And then that's going to lead to more creativity and more problem solving. Give them an exposure to many perspectives and avenues of learning. Take them to museums, take them to plays, take them to art galleries, take them to libraries, take them to historical sites, take them to cultural events. Then reflect on these experiences through conversations. Tap into their thoughts and their perspectives on this world that you're taking them to see. This is not clearly an inclusive list. I also like opera, ballet, things like that too, right? This is not a symphony, who love the symphony. This is not all-inclusive list. But this is just saying, take them into the world and have them explore it with you. The Science Museum is super fun for exploration, if you haven't been. Then help them become resilient through fostering perseverance. This is one that we often overlook when we're trying to develop creative children, is that we have to help them become resilient. We have to teach them how to foster their perseverance. This does not come naturally to them at all. We need to give them responsibility at home. We got to teach them how to do chores, because the whole world isn't always going to be there to pick up after them, right? And that includes after the mistakes that they make. So this is actually an important developmental thing that actually does lead to creativity, I promise. Because I can tell you there are so many times that cleaning our room was going to be the most boring chore ever until my siblings and I made it into a competition. It was great once it became a competition. It was our way of working through something we had to do, but making it fun for us. Teaching them independence, you're going to thank me later when they're getting into adulthood. We can start teaching that now. Ask questions when they struggle to determine the root cause of that struggle and of that problem, right? We don't just necessarily take it at face value. Children are unreliable narrators. You gotta actually ask them more questions to find out the information of what they're actually thinking and what really took place in their world, in that communication, in that fight with their sibling or their friend, or in this miscommunication with them. Help them through that process so that you can have a better idea to guide them through that problem solving thing that we talked about earlier so that they can become more resilient. They need to be taught how to reflect on their complex thought and feelings, and also that what they're experiencing is a normal thing to experience. These children so often, when they are stressed or they're sad or whatever, think that they're all alone in this. They're not all alone in this. It's important that you let them know that these feelings that they're having are real feelings, and it's okay to have them. But then talk to them about it. Talk to them through it. Help them to become more resilient through it and to become stronger individuals. It will open up a world of new creativity for them, I do promise. And then their perfectionist tendencies often get in their way, and they want to quit doing things. Like the moment it gets hard, they're done. You say they're done. You actually need to explore those problems with them and encourage them not to give up just because it's hard. They also won't often tell you that something they're dealing with is difficult. They'll just tell you it's stupid. I don't want to do that, it's stupid. That's dumb, why should I have to do that? That's actually their way of saying this is challenging and I don't know how to continue through this phase. That's your keyword as a parent if they're saying that it's really not that it's stupid or that it's dumb, it's that they don't understand and they need your help in understanding. So do that with them. It's going to build that resilience and perseverance. Because remember, that part of the learning process is knowing that you're not always going to be perfect all the time. And if they can't get through that, they're going to really have a lot of struggles later on in life. And then that's going to open up a world of trying and trying and trying. That's going to open up the world of innovating. That's going to open up the world of creating for them. So they are important things. Also, if they show great interest in pursuing something further after exposure, play, and enrichment, involve them in the process of those next steps. Involve them in it. Don't necessarily make the choices for them. Make those choices with them. And empower them to grow as learners and as creative, gifted students. Thank you. Now, I think I have one quote, and then we're at questions, which I don't even have to read it. I'll just leave it up there. Cool.